Amy asked me in brief to just say a little bit about labor history. Where is all this coming from? Is solidarity unionism new? Some people say it's innovative, which Stoughton and I think is very flattering. Solidarity unionism is anything but innovative. It's back to the future. Solidarity unionism is just a contemporary articulation of a unionism that existed in the 20th century, in the late 19th century. It went by the term syndicalism at that time.
Sorry, one more time?
Syndicalism. And we had a tremendous, powerful labor movement in this country, right? The 8-hour day, May Day we just celebrated, right? These were unionists who took seriously the idea that a union wasn't just, give me a little more of the pie, right? These were unionists organized to change the economy, right? The rise of the wage system, the rise of this ferocious industrial capitalism, it really jarred our working class, right? It de-skilled us, right? It used our bodies and threw our bodies away when our bodies were no longer needed in the production process. There's very exciting times, and I know many people in this room are familiar with those times, but there was also a counterforce, and the counterforce was this idea, what they called then, of craft unionism, right? Craft unionism, where workers would be divided up, here we have the people, who do this little task, they're in their union, this task, that task, right? And this was a very weak form of organizing, and intentionally so, because the objectives of this kind of unionism was not to change society. It was to get a little bit more from the pie. In 1905, you see the advent of the Industrial Workers of the World, which was the first formal labor organization to really take a very cogent critique of this other kind of unionism and put it out there. The IWW in its early years had some incredible successes with this model. Regrettably, and I'll end the little history portion on this point, due to factors we don't have time to get into, but mostly the three are repression, co-optation, and internal division, the wobbly model, which we now call solidarity unionism, largely failed. And business unionism had its golden era. Come the neoliberal juggernaut that Dom so eloquently spoke to, and business unionism's small seat at the table began to be eroded. And that's where we find, I would like to continue that story with the Occupy movement itself. And I think Occupy is finally giving us a meaningful chance to challenge business unionism and go back to what I think is a much more powerful way to both improve our jobs and change a society. So the good news or bad news, depending on how you look at it, is much of what we don't like about a labor law actually has nothing to do with anything that is obligated by the law, right? Where does it come from then? Where are all these bad things? We can't strike, this, that. It comes from choices that unions are making at bargaining tables, right? Let's look at a couple of these issues. No strike clauses. It's a given in a trade union negotiation. It's an absolute given. Not only is a basic no strike clause a given, no strike clauses have become so broad that they're essentially have become scab clauses. What do? They're so broad, and the law itself says if you don't mention this, you can still do it. If you don't mention explicitly that you can't strike in solidarity with a fellow worker at your job, you can still do it. Right? These clauses take away your right to strike with a fellow worker. There's way too many examples of this happening. One I have recently been talking about was the NYU strike, where unionists every day, no one called them scabs. It was normal. Everyone was happy, fine, walked into work as the grad student workers were striking. They did that not because of Taft-Hartley. They did that not because of the National Labor Relations Act, not because of the Taylor Law, right? They did that because the union said at the bargaining table, we not only give up the right to strike, we even give up the right to strike if our fellow workers at our own employer are on strike. I don't know any other way to package it or be diplomatic about it This is a clause which forces, or at least compels, workers to scab on their coworkers. Something a little bit more nuanced, but I think equally and maybe even more dangerous, are grievance procedures, right? These are bread and butter. We're taught to believe, you win a grievance procedure, you have a say at work now if something goes wrong. But look at the nature of the grievance procedure. There's two key points, two key elements of the grievance procedure I think that we need to challenge in the Occupy movement. One is its bureaucratic nature. You have a problem at work. The grievance procedure, it doesn't empower you or give you any incentive to talk to your coworkers. The union apparatus and frankly the bureaucracy, they hold the trigger when it comes to the bureaucratic grievance procedure. They have the right to move forward or not move forward. And the second key point, in addition to the bureaucratic nature, is the exclusive nature. The law, as it's currently constructed, makes it extremely difficult to say, I don't want to take the grievance route, right? I want to get together with my fellow workers and I want to fight this out. Right? The Supreme Court case, which laid out this very, what I would argue, anti-rank and file rule, is called Emporium Capwell. Yeah, Emporium Capwell is a case that was some African American workers out west. They're working at a department store and they were viciously discriminated against. This was in the civil rights era. And they came up with an amazing flyer, very militant. If anyone, you can find the case easily online. There's a very militant flyer, referencing some of the really amazing groups that existed at the time, and they were fighting the company, right? And they were fired. Case comes up, Supreme Court. Who writes the opinion? Thurgood Marshall. Thurgood Marshall himself, right? The legendary civil rights litigator and then Supreme Court justice. Thurgood Marshall ruled against the workers. He said these black workers can't get together and petition to end discrimination at their employer. You know why? Because they were in a union with an exclusive grievance procedure. Brothers and sisters, had these workers not been in a labor union, without question their activity would have been protected. Why did Thurgood Marshall did this? I don't know. I have a theory. I think that Thurgood Marshall misunderstood the bureaucratic and often anti-democratic nature of some unions. So I think in his mind, he said, the workers can just connect with the union and the majority will speak together. What if you have a racist union? Or unaccountable, right? Or just pathetic. Or what if you have an amazing union, but you want to do it with your coworkers? Because you think it's more powerful to take direct action, right? So those are two things we have to really look at, I think, in the nature of unionism, which amazingly have nothing or very little to do with what the National Labor Relations Act says. That's the law that governs private sector union management activities.